Hi, I'm Dr. Patrick Kingsep, and welcome to my channel. Now, I felt the urge to speak about the recent Russian military invasion of Ukraine since it began, as it affects everyone worldwide in different ways. But of course, it directly threatens the life, the freedom, the psychological welfare of those living in Ukraine and the surrounding nations. It's a tragedy. And I want to start this discussion by mentioning that the world is just beginning to see some light at the end of the tunnel regarding the COVID pandemic. This pandemic has undoubtedly taken a psychological toll, and fear and uncertainty have increased in many ways. Now, Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, a conflict thought to be one for the history books, has become a reality. Frantic diplomatic efforts earlier this year failed to avert the worst-case scenario. Russia has been slowly tightening its military grip over Ukraine since 2021 by sending tens of thousands of Russian soldiers and artillery to the doorsteps of Ukraine. Ukraine is now, it's a war zone. And also a humanitarian disaster has unfolded. According to the United Nations, 3 to 5 million people from Ukraine have fled to neighboring countries. Russian troops are engaged in combat with Ukrainians for control of this country. And many of us feel uncertain about the possibility of war spreading through greater Europe. The media informs us of Putin's threat of nuclear weapons, and many of us are thrust into this cycle of fear and anxiety. Now, there is no doubt that Putin's invasion of Ukraine is challenging for Western nations to understand. Russia's actions do not adhere to logic, as a war of choice usually involves a leader weighing up the gains and the potential losses. Now, we know that humans are generally loss averse and will take riskier decisions to prevent a loss than seek gain. However, Putin seems to undermine what we know of basic human psychology. Russia's currency, the ruble, has rapidly declined in value, and Russian businesses, elites, the oligarchs, are watching their fortunes evaporate. Moscow has been virtually cut off from the Western financial feed, and the value of its currency has just tanked. Now, Russia faces damaging sanctions to force Putin's hand and stop this brutal and inhumane war on Ukraine. Putin will take the economic loss and losses incurred from sanctions, but for what strategic or political gain? Some are questioning his psychological stability, and the West is being forced to challenge some of the previous assumptions held about Putin. Now, Putin had put in writing in July 2021 that the Russians and the Ukrainians are one people, and suggested the West had corrupted Ukraine and yanked it out of Russia's orbit through a forced change of identity. Now, Putin has attempted to cast doubt on Ukraine's sovereignty, but Ukrainians who have fought to align more closely with Western institutions like the European Union and NATO in the past 3 decades have pushed back against the notion they are little more than the West's puppets. Putin's effort to bring Ukraine back into Russia's sphere have been met with strong backlash and opposition. Vladimir Putin and his ministers have denied intention to start a war against Ukraine. They have accused the West and the US of creating this crisis and attempted to convince Russian citizens of such. Putin has claimed the West is trying to join Ukraine with NATO and the EU. The Warsaw Pact countries in NATO, full of the Soviet bloc, are Poland, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, as well as the Baltic states. All have joined NATO. He has accused the West and the US of disregarding Russia's security and legitimate interests. The escalation in a year-long conflict between the nations has now triggered the greatest security crisis in Europe since the Cold War. And there's no doubt the news and the images coming out of the Russian-Ukraine conflict, look, they're just bloody distressing. Many images and videos are very much of a graphic, horrific nature. You may be watching these news reports daily and feeling helpless. Many call this doom scrolling, as we enter a spiral of devastating and distressing information. But why are we drawn to continue to doom scroll? Well, we often use this as a coping strategy. This approach is used to gain some control over a situation by gathering as much information as possible. We're attempting to monitor the status of the problem. But this very monitoring, that is the daily scrolling through the media information on the conflict, can be draining, stress-inducing, and create anxiety symptoms. As you cannot channel the information you gather into any direct action, you are again at a loss of control. You feel helpless and occasionally just hopeless. Most of us do not influence the conflict unfolding in Ukraine, but we are nonetheless affected by it. The stress and uncertainty leaves a mark on our emotional well-being. But I want to assure you that there are a few ways you can better manage the stress and the anxiety. Now, one way you can do this is to double down on your self-care strategies and routines. So firstly, you want to prioritize your everyday routines. Predictability is paramount in creating some sense of stability, control, and safety. The everyday things you may be neglecting are now so important. They are getting enough sleep, eating regular healthy meals, doing some form of exercise daily, keeping in touch with the support people in your life, practicing mindfulness, and catching yourself using excessive what-ifs and catastrophizing. Those thoughts, those worrying thoughts that something terrible is going to happen and blowing things out of proportion. So your task today is to pick 2 to 3 things you can build into your daily routine that you may have been neglecting. If you're unsure, start with monitoring your sleep pattern. So what time are you going to bed? And are you using your alarm to wake regularly in the morning? Also, think of building a form of exercise into your daily routine. This could be a daily walk, the gym, going for a swim, yoga, stretching exercises. Pick something, a time you can do it in the day, and commit to it, doing it each day for each day of the week. Now, it's more important than ever to look back at yourself and assess what you can do to lower your stress levels and look after yourself with the current world climate. Now, thanks very much for watching, and I do trust this has been useful. And I know these are very challenging times, especially for the people in Ukraine. Take care. Bye for now.